Hi, my name is Abby Norris, and I'm about to be doing Lab 1, the bones of the skull. So, here is around me. There's nothing except for Mr. Thrifty the skeleton. My computer's turned backwards to prop my phone up. So, here is my sheet of paper. Ooh, sorry, I almost blew away. With the bones that I will be doing. If you can see all of those, and there's nothing written on the back of it. Alright, so I want to get started here. So the first bone that I have is the frontal bone. Let me get this out of the sun real quick. Is the frontal bone right here on the front of the skull. The second bone I have is the parietal bone, which is this bone right here behind the frontal, posterior to it. Then we have the temporal bone, which is right here in the side of the skull. In case you couldn't see parietal earlier, if the sun's in the way, it's past the coronal suture, so it's right here. And then, like I said, we have the temporal bone right here. And then the occipital bone is at the back of the skull right here. Alright, so those are the major bones, and we're going to move on to the coronal suture. Just going back to the front of the skull. This squiggly line that is going left to right is the coronal suture. The sagittal suture is going from the front of the head to the back of the head, right here. Then we have the squamous suture, which is right here. Let me try to get him to sit. It's this little squiggly line right around here. This is the squamous suture. Then the next one we have is the lambdoid suture, which is at the back of the head, right here, going left to right as well. That's a lambdoid. Alright, so the bones of the front of the face, we have the maxilla, just like right through here. We have the mandible. I'm moving. This is the mandible. Your zygomatic bone is right here at the corner of the eye socket. This bone right here. Alright, so the sella tertia is in the sphenoid bone. With this guy, it's kind of hard to get to it, but I'm going to try to dislocate his jaw a little bit here and show you. Here, let me try to slide him up under this chair so you can get a better, kind of a better view. Moving this way. Alright, so this is a lot harder than it looks. So the sella tertia is right here, posterior to the palate. This is the palatine. The sella tertia is back here. I'm going to try one more time to adjust it to where we can see it a little better. I want to point straight to it. The sella tertia is in the middle of the sphenoid bone, which, like I said, is posterior, so it's like right back here is this bone right here. So I'm pointing right into it. That's the sella tertia. Now, right above the sella tertia, closest to the palatine bone, that is the lesser wing, and on either side of it is the greater wings. The greater wings have the foramen rotundum and the foramen ovale, I think. But either way, yeah, right back up in here, straight through, is the sella tertia. And while I'm at it, that is the sphenoid bone from the inferior view. But it asks for a lateral view later. So next is the palatine bone, which is right here at the top of the mouth. The next one is the, well, let me fix this jaw again. This is the vomer bone, this little tiny one right in the middle of where your nostrils would be. This little one right here is the vomer. So now the sphenoid bone, the lateral view, is right in here beside your temporal bone, like right in here. That's the lateral view of your sphenoid. The next bone is your ethmoid bone. Now, again, this one's kind of hard because the skeleton is not quite labeled very well on the inside of the eye socket. So the next two I have are the ethmoid bones and the lacrimal bones. So the ethmoid is back in here. It's a little more posterior than the lacrimal bone, so you'll have the ethmoid and the lacrimal further anterior to the ethmoid. So then you have the supraorbital foramen, which is right here above the eye socket, and in turn you have the infraorbital foramen. The next thing I have is the greater and lesser wing of the sphenoid, which I talked about earlier. Let me pop his jaw back up here. So as I said, the sella tertia is in the middle, and up here closest to the palatine bone, like as far as my fingernail will go up, that is your lesser wing. It is on top of the sella tertia. Whereas the next thing, the greater wing, is on either side of it, on the left and the right, whereas the lesser wing would be on the top, and all of that is in there. So the lesser would be up, and then the greater wings would be left and right. Next, we have the mastoid process, which is this little protuberance right here. This mastoid process. On the same track, we have the styloid process, this pointy bone back here behind the mandible. Next, we have the nasal bone, which are these two bones, this little bone right here. The next thing I have is the mandibular condyle, which is this little bad boy back here on your mandible. And last but not least, we have the foramen magnum, which is where your spinal cord, all of your stuff enters the skull, which is right here. We have any skull that you see that's not attached to a head, there's a big hole in the back. That is your foramen magnum, where this spinal cord and this spine is entering the skull. It's got a little metal part going through it right here. But those were the 25 terms that I chose to show to everyone today. And thank you for watching my video for Lab 1.